We got to talk about this book. Eva by Camille Danciu is like myself, an indie author, a person that's diving into this for the first time ever. And I know indie books have a bad connotation against them. Oh, indie authors don't know how to write. They don't get their stuff properly edited. They don't vet them really well. They're just not good books. Well, to be honest with you, some of them can actually be. And being that this is one of 6 indie books I've read this year, I gotta say this one kind of falls closer to that camp of maybe indie authors aren't all that good. My name is Akil Smith, and I'm the author of Alum Beginnings, and I wanted to read other indie books because of the fact that I want to see what other people are writing. Maybe find ways for me to improve and find ways for them to improve, because who doesn't want the clout? But not only that, the information to know how good of a writer you are and how bad of a writer you are. And in the case of Camille Danciu, in her first ever novella, her first ever novella, I gotta say, it's a great first attempt, but there's a lot of issues. Ava is about the namesake of the character, about this young lady named Ava. We journey from her youth to the time that she becomes a young adult, working in an animal hospital, has a pet cat named Toby, but for whatever reason, one day and one night when she's heading home, the animals look at her different because she looks different. She sees herself in a mirror, but it doesn't necessarily look exactly like her. She punches a mirror, her hand bleeds, it bleeds out this number 606, and weird events kind of happen. She's getting a cup of coffee and she says the name Dungan, though she's never heard of it. She goes onto online forums to understand the phenomena that she's going under right now throughout the story, and finds out that there's this woman that invades dreams and wants to prey on them, take their body and soul to enhance her youth. And so she wants to just get to the bottom of it. And the more she dives deeper, the more tangible this person becomes. And that's probably the most interesting concept of this book. But there's more positives I can say about it. Camille knows how to write. I can't say that she doesn't. But the problem with this book is it took me 3 times to read it just to review this book. And there's one main reason why. The formatting is atrocious. And I'm not one to say I'm the pro at this, but I can easily tell when a book has poor formatting. There's places where dialogue should be on its own and they're baked into the paragraphs. And the paragraphs are double spaced, and so we got this jumbled up mess that we have here. And it's also hard to follow because there's a lot of telling and not showing from this whole entire book. I lost track of where I was going to the story because I was so bored half the time because of the fact that Camille was telling more of us, telling the audience what's happening, how this person feels, and so on and so forth. And don't get me wrong, when you are doing a book, when you're writing a book, yes, even with my book, you have to describe how things are going and understand aspects. But sometimes as a reader, I get that you want to kind of live the life of your character, despite if it's third or first person. You want to understand what they're feeling because you need things that are tangible, some things that are relatable as a reader to keep you invested into the story. She has a love interest here named Sean. The first time I read this book and the first time I reviewed this book, I didn't remember the guy's name. I just remember that she just found him interesting and infatuating. I love the description that Camille does give him from Ava's eyes, and I think that's actually really well done and nicely placed. But then we get back to just a lot of describing in the first 20 pages of this book. The first 20 pages of this book is literally from her youth to her adulthood, telling us everything that's going on in her livelihood. From, oh, I was my mom died at a very young age. Oh, people called me olive skin and I felt really bad about how I looked. Or Ava looked very olive and she wasn't very conscious about how she felt, rather than just describing a scene and showing us through words how this person feels about how she feels under her skin. Instead of showing us that she felt sad, instead of telling us that she felt sad about her mom dying, have a scene that shows us that her mom died and she feels weird about it, especially with the way how she died. That seems really, really weird. And it's very much baked into the plot of this book. The best moments of this book is actually when Camille describes certain scenes. The moment where she sees Helena, who is the main villain of the story, when she shows her and shows the scene of Ava encountering her for the first time, it is so well written. It is so good. And the way how she describes it is freaking fantastic. I loved it. Immediately, she turned around and punched the mirror, consequently herself square in the face. The mirror shattered and her hand began to leak blood into the sink. The smell of copper forced Toby out of hiding, and he was now by her side, squeezically taking in the scene. She was cleaning the blood on her hand and wrapping it. Camille knows how to describe a scene. She knows how to set a scene perfectly well a lot of times in this book, or a few times in this book. I love it. Even the second half of the book, which I don't really want to go into, is almost well described. It seems like a bit of a montage that she wants to go about with the character of Ava after the events of part one. And yes, this book is split into 2 parts, despite the fact that it's 84 pages. She spends that time having Ava be strong within these last couple pages, and I love what she does. But there's no doubt that I feel like, once again, she falls into the trap of just telling us what's happening to her in these scenes, rather than having moments of describing it, showing us as readers what is happening. And once again, it just brings the story down. I don't feel the emotional weight that Ava is feeling, or her friend Sean is feeling. There's just so much times where it's just tell and tell and tell, and I'm basically telling you exactly what's happening. But essentially what I'm saying is the book is losing its emotional weight because it's telling us so much of what's happening and not really hugging us in. And I feel that's where this book really fails, despite the fact I love this cover. This cover is really well done, and whoever Camille paid, or if she did it herself, whoever she got to do this, fantastic. I would love to see this book either as second edition of it, rewritten, formatted a little bit better, touched up upon if possible, because we live in a modern age. You can take a book like this and make it fantastic, because honestly, I would give this book about a 3 out of 5, almost out of generosity, but I feel like it's a 3 out of 5. It has strong themes and it has really good scenes, and the thriller, oh my god, the scene where she gets to the house of this book it actually leaves you a little tense, and I love it. And I think that was probably one of the best parts of this book. But because most of the book is just telling you about Ava and telling you about her life and telling you that she went to a coffee shop and then she randomly said a word and this is what happened. These are moments that I remember because they were well written, but the moments where it's just telling us what happened, they're so hard to remember because you don't have that emotional weight that's coming from the story, and it holds this story down. So even if I had to review it as a critic, I would give it 2.5 stars. It's so close to being actually decent that it needs more work. It needs more love, and I want to recommend this to people that may love it. And originally when I reviewed this as a video, or even on my Amazon review, I said I recommend this to anybody that wants to give this a try themselves. But I can't really recommend it as much as I want to. I only recommend it if people like thriller, they want to read something that's quick, and it has an interesting concept. Or even if you're like me who wants to learn what they've done better. So I guess that leads to my next thing. As I said, I'm an author. I wrote this wonderful book called Island Beginnings, a story about 2 alien best friends, Taisho and Sean, who end up having a falling out because Taisho kills his best friend's mom because she's a part of this evil faction called the Regians. Now, I'm writing a series on this, and now I'm on my 2nd book in this series, and all I can think about when I read these indie authored books is, what did I learn from it? Well, from Camille's book, I learned that you can really go deep into describing a scene. and maybe not always going into the emotions of your characters. But I think that's one thing that she did really well. But setting up a scene is something that Camille does really well with her books. And also, that book showed me something else, which is sometimes describing a scene can be too much, or telling you what a scene is going about can be too much. And I felt like with this book, Alan Beginnings, when I first wrote it, I felt like I had a lot of scenes like that, but I've read my book so many times to actually say, maybe not. Alan Beginnings does have moments where it has things like Camille's story to get the story moving forward. Like, they actually did this and they did that just to keep the story moving forward, to keep the flow going, so it's not stopping just to tell us what's happening. And saying to myself, well, Camille takes a lot of times to just telling us, oh yeah, she lived a normal life. Oh, she didn't like this about herself, and so on and so forth. When I think about her book, I think, okay, if we want to take Ava's character, why not just say, coming up to Ava walked through the school corridor, feeling like every single eye was all around her, just watching her like she was some kind of object. Overall, as a reader and also as a writer, I take cues from this book and say, this is what I shouldn't do and just what I could do better. But what I can give to the author is figure out how you can make a scene that you're setting by describing it. Find ways to describe what you know your character's going through, so that readers can really ingest themselves into it and not so much go through the list, because it felt like it was list rather than really describing everything she's going through, because we as readers want to go through it with her. And that's something I wanted to do as much as I can with Alan Beginnings. I hope that helps.